You know those Reddit posts that incite an entire investigative team to solve some big mystery? Well, I found one of those in the D&D context, and I think we need a different atmosphere for it. Three years ago, a Redditor made a post to the Baldur's Gate subreddit looking to answer a question on a forgotten user. The question has gone unanswered to this day. Recently, I tried to post the following question on Red Redacted's blog post, but I was told only team members were allowed to post. Help. May I ask, respectfully, are you a woman? The evidence leads me to believe that you are a woman, whereas it would seem by association that a girl wouldn't be into the nuts and bolts of the Dungeons and Dragons experience. Sorry. The nuts and bolts of the Dungeons and Dragons experience as much as you are. Can you confirm one way or the other? Throughout his entire investigation, the Redditor's call for help went completely unanswered. He may never know if he was actually talking to a woman. Alright guys, I can't keep it in anymore. Man, is it really that shocking that a woman would like D&D? Especially in the current ecosystem we live in. I guess all those ladies are just faking it to get the attention of men. Oh wait, we actually already talked about that last week. Incels are really predictable. I'm currently coming off of another experience, and I was hoping if you and your viewers could help me understand if I'm in the wrong for this. I don't personally feel like I am, but outside perspectives are always nice to have. Sorry if I reuse words or some stuff might be a bit off. I'm not physically well. I'm trying to get this out as best as I can. A couple of days ago, we'll get to the exact number later, I was scrolling through r/LFG. Oh crap, almost forgot. r/LFG! Looking for a game to join or DM. I found a post made for an established group, looking for a game that was heavy on roleplay. This seemed right up my alley, so I went to the forum and filled it out. It was a massive forum with 3 pages. But once I finally finished, I sort of forgot about it. 3 days later, I was contacted by the original poster who wanted to do a one-on-one interview. 2 days later, we had the interview and it seemed to go pretty well. I was told at the end that there would be a group interview, and the day after, I was invited to a server with everyone in it. 4 days later, the interview happened, and it all seemed to go really well. They seemed to vibe with me, they were excited about the campaign pitch, wanted to see the maps I had, and implied they had picked me. It ended, and I waited for a confirmation. Today, 3 days later, I honestly just haven't been feeling well. I'm very sick, little to no sleep, and I'm coming off of having no caffeine for the past couple days, which... Skill issue? I'm kidding. I'm not judging people for drinking caffeine, but I'm gonna be honest, I haven't had a soda or coffee my entire life. And I'm still super short. See, what the hell? I tried! Anyway, I was not feeling well, and I got a notification from the server. They had decided to not go with me after all. I left the server because I just wasn't, and still I'm not feeling well. After 13 days of waiting and interviews, I just didn't have the energy to deal with it. After leaving, I got a message from the person who originally reached out to me, which I will copy and paste. Hey, so we actually had gone with you, but we wanted to give you a test to see if you'd be the right fit? Considering the fact that you left the server without saying you appreciated us, giving you a chance, or wishing us luck with the DM, we decided to go with, you failed the test, and we actually won't be choosing you. If you ever want a DM for anyone in the future, please learn how to get that attitude under control. Just some advice. Can you guys give me a second?
That guy again.
You won't be seeing that guy again. After that, they removed me. Mostly, I was just feeling really done with this whole situation. I don't want to say it like my time was wasted, because I don't mind going through the whole process only to find out they decided to go with a different GM. Just pick whoever works best. And if I don't work best, that's fine. But the fact that it was some kind of weird test that I failed because I left the server without saying anything just feels really dumb to me. I don't know, what do you think? Thank you for reading. I mean, the skit made it super obvious, but drum roll, please. Not the a-hole? Oh my god, that message pissed me off. They are recruiting a dungeon master, a person who needs to do a lot of work to make the game happen. You should be showing appreciation to them. I'm not saying you gotta grovel at the feet of your DM, but like, this is the polar opposite. This convoluted test is completely ridiculous. For God's sakes, this guy only knew them for a couple of, hours? So why would he give them a letter of forgiveness that they didn't pick him? My God. I can't really put into words why this angers me so much. It's just so bratty and stupid and unnecessary. DMing is hard enough as is. Don't make it worse. Some years ago, I was at my local gaming club, overhearing 3 of my friends talking about their Game of Thrones tabletop role-playing game campaign, with one of them as the game master. We met before through miniature wargaming, so I walked over and asked them if they wanted an additional player. They agreed, but told me the next session in line would not be Game of Thrones, but Iron Kingdoms, with another friend of theirs, let's call him Bob, as the game master. And I could join that too. I had to decline because of my work schedule. Christmas and retail is hell. All I want for Christmas. What? It's my job to traumatize you here, come on. But I agreed to join that Iron Kingdoms campaign the next month. I really dodged a bullet with that because that Iron Kingdoms campaign never made it to the next session, nor did any campaigns with Bob as the game master. Here's the kicker. Bob was not a bad game master because he was a creep or incel or manipulative, some instance of power tripping, but because every time he discovered a new system or had a new idea for a campaign, he just dropped the old one, never to be picked up again. Now imagine your game master is dropping systems and campaigns like hot potatoes every second session, and you have to make an entire new character every single time. My friends told me later that they kept up with his shenanigans because he was the only game master they knew at the time, and he was always very enthusiastic. Also, they always played his place, so they rolled with it. It got so bad that some characters never got to be played at all because Bob had moved to a new system already. Now, like most of us, my friends tend to really invest in their characters, so every dropped or even unused one felt like a big old waste of time, thought, and effort. When they told me this story the first time, the 3 of them started to count their characters made for Bob many soon-to-be drop campaigns. They lost count at close to 30 characters.
Shit.
That DM
got more bodies on him than a Chinese cemetery.
To add insult to injury, Bob never really learned the rules of the new systems he brought to the table. He just, skimmed them. Unsurprisingly, this resulted in many questionable decisions, as Bob made rule changes on the fly, almost every time at the expense of the players. The most infamous incident happened in a session of Vampire the Masquerade, one of the very few times they played for more than 1 or 2 sessions. It's when he decided that every time one of their characters drinks blood, they would lose 1 point of humanity, going from 0 to 10. If going low, you become more and more of a monster, becoming unplayable at lower scores. There was no kind of saving throws or workarounds at all. Oh, and their ghouls, Bloodhound, an incredibly loyal human slave. I don't know if I could say that. Anyway, yeah, their ghouls would try to harm them at every opportunity. Nothing of this in the rules, but well, why should the GM read the rules beforehand, right? I joined them in that Game of Thrones campaign and one of the Degenesis Rebirth. It's a German post-apocalyptic RPG. But anyway, I joined with one of my friends as the Game Master. Within this campaign, and one of my own campaigns, D&D 5th edition, I had to learn that Bob was a bad player also. Every time something bad happened to one of his characters that he didn't like serious injuries, he let them just die and insisted on making a new one.
Ugh! Damn it! My leg! It's been broken! But that doesn't mean my fight is over. I can still stand against the forces of evil and await for help to arrive. Oh, hey, are you the help I was waiting for? Are you a healer? Can you help me out with my leg? No, I'm your creator. Oh my God! Literally, you are the patron of my power. Is this some kind of divine intervention? Reward for my years of service protecting the people of Faerun. Back to the drawing board.
The worst incident was in Game of Thrones, when the lowborn love of his life and his noble character told him in secret about her being pregnant. It resulted in him stabbing her with his sword, trying to kill her. Which, look at Bob, dumbfounded, with his argument being that somebody could use that against him in the future. As if there isn't a truckload of bastards in Game of Thrones! In the end, Bob moved away, and the rest of us still played that Game of Thrones campaign, with many sessions to come. Ugh, my god, a minor horror story, all things considered, but still an annoying one. I said earlier that GMs work really hard to make their games fun, and that's true, but players, they work too. Maybe not as much, but they still put effort into their characters. The GM should respect that effort. This guy has zero respect, and on top of that, he's not even learning the systems. Switching to a new system can be really fun, but only if you bother to actually learn it. Last-minute rules adjustments are just ridiculous. Not to mention, he murdered his wife. His in-game wife, but still, pretty bad. I've been thinking as of late about what horror stories I have to share, and unfortunately this one came back to me out of the blue one day. I had repressed it for a while, and for good reason, but I figured it'd be more fun to read than to experience. This happened a few years ago now, back when I was a sophomore in high school. I know what you're thinking. High school D&D games never end well, and this one was no exception. Good to know I'm always right. I had been stuck in the role of Forever DM for a while at that point, running a long-term game for my then girlfriend and our little group of nerds. It had been going well up until a couple of our players decided to leave for college, and we decided to put it on hiatus rather than switch it up, running it online, since we were all more inexperienced with online D&D back then. Unfortunately, that game never did end up getting finished, but that is a horror story for another day. You guys really need to stop teasing me like that. I still needed to feed my D&D addiction somehow, and that's when my girlfriend at the time joined a group of older kids playing at our local library. I'd never met any of them before then, but apparently they were down for me to hop in as a player in a new campaign they had been setting up, which was nice, since it gave me a break from running games and let me focus on my own player character for once. There were 6 of us, including me and the DM. Our players were as follows: me as the Dragonborn Sorcerer, then girlfriend playing a Warforged Monk, Bard, who was a grade or 2 above us and close with my then girlfriend, although I didn't know them that well, Paladin, an 18 going on 19-year-old at the time, who was a bit of a freak, very obsessed with the most vile, particular kind of anime. I have no idea if I can say that, okay? YouTube law, clarify, please! Wizard, a childhood acquaintance of mine, keyword acquaintance. Unfortunately, he did not seem to have the same opinion of me. This will be relevant later. DM, great guy, who I'm still friends with to this day, but perhaps a tiny bit too much of a pushover in this campaign in particular. Just about everyone was a problem player for one reason or another in this campaign. Yikes, I know some reasons were worse than others, but we'll get there. It started out with just me, then girlfriend, Bard, and Paladin. Wizard didn't join for a few sessions after we started and didn't stay for long either. At first, things were going great. Me and my then girlfriend had joined in during the group's second session, filling in the places of a couple of players who had apparently dropped out due to previous scheduling issues. The DM was incredibly sweet and very talented, and our first session as a part of the game went exceedingly well. DM really loved my character concept in particular, which maybe might have been the inciting incident for him to start playing favorites towards me a bit, but somehow this was the least of our worries when it came to this game overall. The problem started with Paladin during our second session when he joined the group. As previously mentioned, the guy had some devious hobbies, and this started to make itself apparent as we continued to play with him. His character, as far as I can recall, was some kind of homebrew kitsune succubus mix with... Did he write that down on purpose?
Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. Let us bring our new creation into this world. Yes, we will be unstoppable with this creature at our side. First, the essence of the fox. The bone of the demon. Yes, worthy ingredients for our great warrior. The flesh of the swinging schlong. What did you say? Yes, our creature shall have the longest schlong. No, stop. What? Why? No. And the milk of the largest booba balloonas. Now our creation is complete. So mote it be. No, so moted? Not! Please, dude, why did you create this? Okay, like, this is really weird. What's even the purpose of having a creature like... God!
It could shapeshift into pretty much whatever physical form he wanted for free, whenever, without altering its stats. How this was cleared with the DM, I have no clue. He mostly used it for weird jokes and had a particular tendency to make his character appear as a child while still low-key fawning over them.
Wait.
Weird as hell. Somehow none of us said anything about it for a couple of sessions though. He had a soundboard of noises that he would play at random throughout our sessions, totally disrupting the flow of any attempts at roleplay with the most ungodly of sounds. He also really loved seducing every NPC in sight at every possible opportunity and would always pressure our DM to go into detail about scenes that should have been fade to black. How is this guy not kicked out? Because whenever my friends make like a duck noise in the soundboard, I immediately swear by it. For context, none of us had ever cleared those kind of topics being brought into the campaign. The DM was incredibly uncomfortable with this as well. Unfortunately, this was not even close to what actually got the guy kicked. So one day, about 4 or 5 sessions in, we get the news that Paladin finally found himself a girlfriend, something he had been talking excessively with us about pining after, and they want to join the campaign and play with us. We were happy for him, despite his in-session behavior, and we were ecstatic to finally have a new player. We gladly allowed her to join in as our party druid. None of us had ever met her beforehand, but we were really excited to get to know her and introduce her to the game, which had still been going relatively well, minus Paladin's occasional icky antics. The day that session rolled around is one I will unfortunately never be able to scrub from my mind. We all had gathered around our game table, waiting for Paladin and our new druid to show up, and when they finally did, we could tell something was off. Druid was a really sweet girl, incredibly polite, invested in our game, despite not being as intimately familiar with D&D as the rest of us. She wasn't the problem herself, it was her relationship with the Paladin. To start off, it was not lost on us that Druid seemed young. Oh, not again.
Wait.
We weren't sure how old she was at first, but it was easy to see she was too young for Paladin, who was the oldest member of our group and, may I remind you, was a whole-ass adult who had graduated from high school the semester prior. I know some people think it's silly to say whole-ass adult about like a 19-year-old. But bro, this is a different circumstance, okay? Druid couldn't have been over 5 feet tall, had one heck of a baby face, and has a certain air of social inexperience about her that made every single one of her interactions with Paladin just feel like wrong. It didn't help that Paladin kept making incredibly inappropriate comments toward her the whole time, touching her when he thought nobody was looking and attempting to force an in-game scenario between their two characters, a feat which made Druid and the rest of us obviously uncomfortable. The alarm bells were ringing mere moments after being in the same room with these two. The second the session ended, then girlfriend and I pulled Druid aside and just did some questioning. We asked how old she was and how she met Paladin, how long they'd been together, questions that I don't remember her answers to anymore, but I do remember the last one. Oh boy, the last one. Not wanting to assume the worst of Paladin, we just wanted to check how old she was. Her answer was 13. A 13-year-old dating an adult at least 5 years her senior. An adult who kept acting incredibly and publicly intimate towards her constantly. Yeah, no way in hell we were gonna keep playing with this guy. I instantly saw red. Then girlfriend had a serious sit-down conversation with this girl to desperately convince her to break up with Paladin. Meanwhile, I went and had a little talk with the DM, informing him that Paladin was not only a creep, but a straight-up diddler of the kidlers. You come up with a better substitute. DM was sent into crisis mode over this because he and Paladin had apparently been friends for a long time, and DM had been in total denial about this behavior up until this point. Eventually, though, he calmed down and made the executive decision to kick Paladin from the game. When we confronted him, Paladin instantly went into self-defense mode, trying to excuse this behavior as like, oh, she's almost 14, which is almost 15, which is almost 16, which is almost 17, which is practically 18, okay? Dr. Disrespect logic. Yeah, that doesn't make it any better. He said, I'm not a diddler by the technical definition of the term. Who cares? You're a weirdo. And anyone who knows the technical definition of the term is probably a freak anyway. Luckily, the DM was not about to be convinced to keep this guy in his game or in his life, and we all cut ties completely. I haven't seen him since, and Druid left our game shortly afterwards as well. Apparently, she and her mom ended up pressing charges, but I unfortunately have no clue how well that turned out. Best of luck to her, though. She was a really sweet kid who did not deserve to be in that situation to begin with. Things calmed down for a while, but sadly, this is not where the horror story ends. What followed certainly wasn't as bad as unknowingly playing several sessions with, hey, it's catching on, Kiddler Diddler. But it was a wee bit traumatic for me in particular, so I still think it's worth including here. Our game was going great for the next few sessions, up until Wizard joined in to replace the hole that Paladin left in the party. As previously mentioned, Wizard and I had known each other prior since our first years of middle school. Growing up, he was a quiet kid with a troubled life, and I think he got attached to me early on because I was one of the only people who would talk to him and show my sympathy. I never saw us as particularly close, but he considered me his best friend, and very clearly had a puppy crush on me when we were kids, despite my obvious discomfort and rejection of his advances at the time. For reference, I didn't know back then, but I am in fact a lesbian. Woohoo, we love lesbians here. Something which Wizard was, and clearly will continue to be, extremely disrespectful of. At this point, Wizard and I hadn't actually talked in a long time, but he was apparently acquainted with the DM and eventually got invited to be our new 4th party member. He was immediately ecstatic when he found out that I was playing too, and it was made apparent very quickly that his romantic feelings for me had not faded, despite it being years and me being in a relationship with a girl who was also a member of the party at the time. What's more, he had grown up into one of those creepy, icky incel types who would spend much of the pregame moping around and whining about how no one liked him, how he would never find a girlfriend because no woman wants to date a nice guy like him. Yikes. To his credit, he was usually, actually, a pretty nice guy, but just not in this particular instance.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of the nice guy, the unwise? It's not a story that Reddit would tell you. Nice guy, the unwise, was a person with kindness in his heart, but because he did not have a girlfriend, he turned into a fucking weirdo. And because of that, he could never get a girlfriend. Ironic, isn't it? He was so dedicated to his pursuit, he was blinded and became forever without bitches.
In-game, our nice guy would constantly flirt with my PC in character, despite me playing her as asexual because I wanted to avoid this exact situation from happening. That in-game flirting quickly turned into suggestive overtones out of game, as he started constantly bringing me gifts and food and tried to be physically affectionate and complimentary towards me while my then girlfriend was sitting right there. He eventually got my Discord username through our shared D&D group server, using my DMs to trauma dump unprompted in a server to garner pity from me and vent about how everyone was so mean to him, how he'd never find a girlfriend because he was such a loser, and how I was the only person who cared about him, and how he wished someone, anyone, would date him. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Especially someone as kind and as caring as me. It was a very thinly veiled way of both dropping hints and trying to emotionally manipulate me into being in a relationship with him. Not gonna happen. I never even bothered to respond. He would then get mad at me in our in-person sessions, the only time we saw each other, by the way. He was mad at me for not replying to his messages and took out his anger in-game through forced PvP combat with my character, all complete without warning with me or the DM, something that neither of us were about to encourage. Then girlfriend started to take the hint as well and decided to have a talk with Wizard, which unfortunately went about as well as you would expect. Turns out he had no idea that we were like even dating or that I was lesbian to begin with. The man she's singing about in the song really missed out on a good girl.
Day 2.
Oh, that's nice. They're going on like a best friend camping trip. They're even holding hands.
Day 3.
Now don't you dare stop.
Don't you
dare stop trying to get the sand off her skin. Yeah, nothing gay happening here at all.
He acted like none of his advances were anything more than just being friendly, despite the fact that he only treated me, specifically, this way. At least he had, but I guess finding out that me and my then girlfriend were lesbians activated like a creepy trigger in his brain that immediately made it okay for him to, objectify. That's a good one. Yeah, some creepy trigger in his brain immediately made it okay for him to objectify us constantly, trying to insert himself in our relationship. My then girlfriend started to get DMs from him as well. They turned from emotional manipulation to straight up harassment pretty incredibly quickly, and he made a whole group chat with me, her, and him, where he would message both of us in explicit ways, talk about how hot our relationship was, and all the disgusting things he'd like us to do behind closed doors. Keep in mind, we're all like sophomores in high school. Absolute depraved behavior, especially at our ages. Easy to say, me and my then girlfriend pretty much immediately blocked him, and the DM kicked him out of our game too. Unfortunately for me, it still doesn't end there. He had somehow gotten my phone number from somebody at some point and continued to harass me over text long after I blocked him on Discord. He made alt accounts to try and continue to harass me there as well, but I ended up just turning private messages off until he left me alone, which was not for a long time. He spam called me a ton before I blocked his number, and his voicemail messages ranged from depraved rants about how me and my then GF were ungrateful wenches, just like the rest of the women who didn't want anything to do with him, to sobbing and crying that he missed us and wanted us back in his life, even though we never wanted to do anything with him to begin with, and would do anything to be part of our relationship just for a bit, as it was some sort of fantasy of his. It was deeply unsettling to both me and my then girlfriend, but apparently this sentiment was not shared by our bard, despite all the harassment Wizard had put us through. Because come to find out, a few sessions later, it was revealed that Bard had apparently felt so bad for the guy that they entered a weird sort of friends with benefits situationship with him behind our backs. Yikes. We all disapproved, obviously, and this led to a serious fallout between then GF and Bard, whose years-long friendship pretty much dissolved as a result. We still played D&D with Bard, though, which proved to be plain awkward for everyone involved. Awkward? Try a freaking war zone! How can you survive with this much tea? I mean, personally speaking, I'm doing great. This is awesome. I'm sorry. It sucked, because it completely derailed what was left of our sessions to the point that Bard sat there playing games on their computer and texting Wizard instead of engaging with the story like 90% of the time. I honestly have no idea how our campaign lasted this long to begin with, but once me and then GF's relationship started to crumble for just unrelated reasons, it all became too much for me, and I decided to drop out. Pretty sure the campaign fizzled out entirely after that. The only person I still maintained a relationship with was the DM, who has luckily gotten a bit better with not befriending total weirdos. But yeah, easily the worst tabletop gaming experience of my life. I am now a happy forever DM of an online campaign with an entirely different group of people, none of which are diddlers or objectifiers of lesbians or jerks who date people who harass their friends. Hooray for that, at least. There are plenty of other slightly less awful horror stories involving my DM, my then girlfriend, her group of friends that I might send your way eventually, but for now, I hope you got something out of this story that has unfortunately haunted me for many years. Thanks, Crispy. Sorry you had to read that. Hope you had a great day despite it. I had a great day because of this! Sorry, again. You know what's funny? Unfortunately, I have experienced adjacent stories throughout my high school life as well. Not in D&D, mind you, but just like in my day-to-day. Look, we like to say, oh, teenagers will be teenagers, kids will be kids, but that doesn't mean that there isn't legitimate harm that comes out of high school. Just because someone is young, that does not excuse their behavior. It's still bad. Youth is a reason, not a disqualifier. It just goes to show that finding a group you meld with and that meld out of game is incredibly important. You could have the best DM ever, and from the looks of it, this DM was pretty darn good, but it doesn't matter. If the people outside the game don't get along, it's not gonna work. I would argue to say that befriending the people at your table is one of the most important steps to founding a healthy, long-term group. But don't befriend people like this. They're not worth it. Hey, do you know what that is?
it's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our last episode of Q and Play. I talked about some of my parasocial horror stories. It's linked up in the cards. We've got a new Q&A coming up soon, so look out for that. But hey, before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, you can go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. My GF's right there to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, and that's like, comment, subscribe, I'll see you all next time. Farewell.